Good afternoon, everyone. Taking a look, world wholesale trade mimicking what had happened in the decline of our economy, say circa 2008, following the same pattern. Chain store sales and disposable income, the almost exact overlay of 2007 and the S&P to 2015. New orders for manufacturing only positive 1 out of 7 months. World Bank warns of rare 9 commodity sector decline this year. Take a look at how many people are on government food stamps that cannot afford any types of price rises on their food staples. Forecast on the world wheat market for production down in 2015-16. World cereals market also down 2015-16. Coarse grains down 2015-16. The FAO meat price index up. Take a look at how much you're going to pay for your water, and going forward, when the weather gets really cold, we're going to need to start planting crops with drones. With oil being such an integral part of our farming supply chain, everything from the petrochemical fertilizers to running the machines in the fields to the transportation of the trucks to actually move that to the stores. Now take a look at the supply demand. The demand is still running somewhere around 2013 levels, and you ask yourself why. If there's more people in the world, more businesses over the last 2 years, why is demand for oil still the same? It's really interesting how we're starting to match patterns here from the 2007 and 8 run up to that massive decline in 2009. It looks like it's already happened with the price decrease. You get this demand destruction happening where oil went up to 147 on West Texas crude per barrel, and then it crashed. The system couldn't handle. People couldn't pay $5.50 a gallon for their gas and still go buy food. This time it looks at the breaking point was around 115 per barrel. That took it down, and the demand destruction curve happened a little bit lower this time. Now when we go forward here, since the conventional crude production was now substituted with tar sands and different kind of deep water drilling, a few other mechanisms, and fracking and shale, everything else beyond what we consider liquid, easy to suck out of the ground oil, the U.S. really put the pedal to the metal and increased their production from the lows in 2008, under 4 million barrels a day, all the way up to a little bit over 8 million barrels. That is a doubling of the U.S. oil production in a matter of about 6 years or so. Crude oil cost curve can also be reformulated as energy return on energy invested, the EROEI. After all these easy to extract oil resources disappeared, we started to go into these much more costly extraction methods for, like I say, tar sands. They take that bitumen, 20% oil mixed with 80% sand, drop it into boiling water, which they need to use natural gas to heat the water to separate the oil from the actual diderous and matter, scrape that off and then refine it. Shale oils as well, and different types of deep water drilling and fracking. Fracking adds to the cost as well as destroys our aquifers. Now, the reason I would bring all this to the attention is this will have an inverse this time. Food prices are going to rise as everything else declines. The wholesale trade, as you can see very clearly, starts to match up. When there's a massive decline in wholesale trade, there starts to be an effect in the economy as well, because people are just not pushing product further in the store or purchasing. When we look at U.S. manufacturing orders, only 1 month positive out of 7. That didn't even happen in 2008 and 9. When we start taking a look at 2007 overlay on 2015, notice the drawdowns, and you start to see the peaks and valleys matching up nicely. We're starting to get off a more precipitous decline this time, though. Chain stores are really where the action is, where you can see where people's consumer spending is being thrown around. If they're not purchasing consumables right out of the stores, then what are they spending their money on? The CPI, look at that, it's gone negative. It's the lowest negative to date that's ever been calculated. That's according to Zero Hedge. And when we come on here, Investors Intelligence, take a look where we are in uncharted territory in terms of bull-bear ratio. What's the decline going to be like? Now, luckily for us in the United States as well as worldwide, the price of petrol per gallon is down to just around $2. But remember, when the oil price was $147, that gasoline price was around $5.50 to $5.70 per gallon. Also, with the shipping across the planet, the Baltic Dry is at an all-time low. There's just not as much business out there happening as purported in the news. And to add the last little piece of information into the pot before I start stirring it on how these cold weather events will affect our lives with declined economy, World Bank put out a really nice article here. Business Insider picked it up. Extremely rare decline of all 9 commodities sectors. Doesn't usually happen like that. So I pulled right over and thought food's the most important thing. People can live without gasoline because not everybody drives, but everybody eats every day. So look at the vulnerability in that lowest bottom 20% in American society living off food stamps. Now they can not afford any types of price increases going forward in our food supply. But as it gets colder, that's exactly what's going to happen. And with the new impending stock market decline, you're going to get the double whammy, but it'll be an inverse this time. Instead of prices on fuels coming down along with everything else, the prices on fuels will come down, stocks will come down, but food prices are going to increase because of all these cold weather events. This is going to have a dramatic effect on people getting to that food source when they have less disposable income. Now, currently, the FAO food price index is falling around 1.3% from March, but the meat index is up about 1.7%. So you have to ask yourself, do you consume more meat or do you consume more vegetables? When we go ahead and we're looking into the futures, I keep saying all these little affected areas across Russia, Canada, United States, Australia that are losing wheat production this year have all added up into just a tiny percentage that's offset any gains that we would have made. And here we go. World wheat market forecast for 2015 and 16 down production wise. World cereal production decline, FAO puts it at 1.5% in 2015. We're kind of at that rollover period where there's just enough access to make up for the declines that we're experiencing in our food production across the globe right now. How long will this little tiny seesaw last before it goes negative and the food prices really start to rise up? World rice is the only one that's showing an increase. This matches up with the FAO USDA forecast. The bare essentials, look how much people are spending on their food. The lowest 10% spends approximately 20% of their disposable income on food. This is going to increase. So if they have food stamps, the prices increase, they're not going to be able to buy as much. Families won't be able to feed themselves as well in these lower tiers. And this is where the social strife will start to come in. The food inflation of these 5 different entry categories here, meat, poultry, fish and seafood, fruit and veg, dairy products, are all holding steady from the highs of 2014 and declining just slightly. But it won't take too long before these start going northward again, and I'm really curious what this chart would look like if I had a crystal ball out to like 2025. And the World Bank also has a food price indices page you can check out. They're featuring grains and edible oils on this, but notice that it seems like it has sort of reached the bottom and it might uptick again. Goes through these undulations, and I do believe that we're looking for a forward price movement again. FAO food price index broken down by specific category. We're currently sitting around 171. The highs occurred around 2014. We'll probably be pushing back up in that area by the end of the year again when harvests come in lower than expected, lower than forecast. And when you're taking all this into consideration, you're thinking, wow, if I have to grow some of my own food because food's going to get really expensive by 2020, where would I want to live? This is from NOAA showing the annual average snowfall in inches. Well, that is actually incorrect. That should be a little further south this year and will continue to push further south as we get into this cooling phase in the new grand solar minimum. That light gray area is actually going to be where the white is. So just move each band down one area. We're looking at about 250 miles south push on the cold. So 24 to 36 inches is going to be down in that Virginia, right at the northern border of Tennessee and to North Carolina. Also, if you're thinking about working with your communities or others around you, take a look at where the density map is. It's a nice nighttime visual here of all the electrical usage across the United States. This is a soil index. So if you're considering planting any types of crops that need to exist, you're going to have to take a look at the soils, the types of soils, as well as the amount of rainfall and temperature that these crops can exist in. The U.S. Drought Monitor, this is from last month. Water is a big issue when you're going to grow crops. So the water, the temperature, and the soil, you're going to need to take all those into consideration when you do grow your own food. Now, the price of water, unless you have a well, And is that well going into an aquifer, or is that well going into a primary water source? And you really might want to do a bit of digging on secondary water sources, which are aquifers and runoff, and primary water source, which actually is naturally occurring from the mantle of our earth. Primary versus secondary water, check that out. And as a solution, we're talking about actually using drones to plant trees and crops now. These drones are going to drop a pre-sprouted, pre-fertilized, and some sort of soil substrate, so when it penetrates the ground, it becomes a growing apparatus and can crack apart like an eggshell, and the root system can just quickly descend into the soil. They're talking about being able to plant 36,000 trees a day off a single drone at 15% of the cost of traditional methods. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. If you like the information, make sure to subscribe to my channel, Adapt 2030.